Hello, welcome to my channel. My name is Williams, and today we're going to be talking about why most of us don't actually go far in life, why we don't meet our goals, why we don't meet our expectations. Now, this is a very interesting and important topic, and I implore you to listen and watch and learn new things. Now, I want to learn why most times we don't go far as a person, why you don't go far in terms of achieving your goals, in terms of meeting your targets in life generally. Now, one of these reasons is our perception. Our perception, in simple terms, has to do with how we view things, our view of life. Let's say, for instance, you could look at something and be sincere about it, to say, I'm sincerely right about this thing. This is what I sincerely think about this. And it will happen that you might be sincerely wrong. Because it is not a matter of whether you're sincere or not. It's a matter of the truth. You can actually be sincerely wrong and you can be sincerely right as well. So if you have a perception of something and that thing is not what it is, to you, you are sincere. But at that point, you might be seen as someone who is sincerely wrong. Okay? Now, what do we mean by perception? I'm going to take out time to explain what perception is all about. Let's take, for example, if I ask you what this is, you could tell me that this is a glass cup. Some other person can tell me that, okay, this is a cup containing water. Another person can say, this is a glass cup containing water. And then some other person can say, this is a glass cup that is half filled with water. And then someone else could say, this is a glass cup that is half empty with water. So it depends on your perception. Now, to an optimistic person, this is a glass cup, and this glass cup is half full. All right. Now, to a pessimist, this glass cup is half empty. So our lives are generally affected by our perception of things. Our lives are generally affected by how we perceive things to be, not exactly how things really are. Our perception of things might be from a sincere point of view. It is not because you are wrong, or neither is it because you are right. Our perception of things could be sincere, could be very sincere. Like, you could sincerely look at this cup and say, this is half empty. And then you could sincerely look at this same cup and say, this is half full. The both of you are correct. Okay? But it depends on what you see. And most times, what influences our perception of things are our environment, how we were raised, the environment we grew up in. You know, these are the things that influences how we perceive things to be. So there are some people who are just structured in a particular way, in a particular manner, that they always see the wrong in everything. Those are people who will say they are always negativistic or they are pessimistic. Alright? Now, to a pessimistic person, they always see things from the negative point of view. Right? Then an optimistic person sees things from the positive point. So it is either you are optimistic with your views or you are pessimistic. So it's very important we have this clear understanding. Now, our perception of life, our perception of things that happen around us affects how we live our life. You remember the theory of how you think, which affects your feelings, and then your feelings affect how you act, your reactions or your actions. Now, your actions affect what you get, what comes to you. So the energy you give out is what comes back to you. So if you perceive things to be negative, always negative, the tendency is that you're always going to attract negativity. Alright? But if you're someone who perceives things in a positive aspect, the tendency is that positivity is always going to be attracted to you. So it is what you give that you get. It is what you give out, the energy you give out, that is what comes back to you. It is very, very important that we understand this, that as we see things, our views about things is what affects how we feel about things. Okay? Now, how we feel about things affects how we act. It affects our actions about those things, and how we act towards those things affects what we are going to get from those things. So it's very, very important that you understand this, that your perception is very important when it comes to how you live your life. Do you perceive things to always be in the negative, or do you have an optimistic view of something? How we perceive things leads to how we end up living either a quality life or a life that is filled with negativity, that is filled with fear and anxiety, and subsequently even depression. Okay, so our perception plays a major role. It is like the lens with which we view things. So your lenses to which you view things, to which you see things, are very, very important. And what influences our lenses, which we use to perceive things, is our environment, our friends, our parents, and generally the public where we find ourselves. So it is very important we have this view. So this is why most times you will see that most successful people are people who are not too cognitive. People who are successful in life generally are people who are not too cognitive. Why? Because they are less analytical. They less analyze. So they take more actions than they analyze things. But those who are very cognitive, who are very brilliant, who are super intelligent, they are the ones who always, most times, do not do well, because they are always analytical, they are always critical, and they always want to see the ending from the beginning. So you're about to start something, you're about to start a business, and you're already seeing 10 different reasons why that business will fail. You're already seeing 10 different reasons why that business will collapse. Of course, it is good to be proactive, but this is not proactivity now. You have not really started this business, but you're already seeing how the business will collapse. So most times, these kind of people put lots of time in analysis and constantly analyzing every of their action, which could actually delay or lead to procrastination and subsequently lead to loss of opportunities. So it's very important that we have this clear understanding that our perception is very, very important about life. If you have this understanding, then you will always try as much as possible to always be optimistic, because optimism is what is going to help you to do as much things and fail in many things and eventually succeed in one thing. One of my mentors, Mr. Jim Rohn, once said something. He said he went for a seminar, and this seminar was filled with high class people in the society, people who were very rich and influential, very wealthy, successful people. And one of them asked him a question. The person was like, Mr. Jim Rohn, you've been around the cities, you've traveled far and wide around the whole world, and you've had experiences with people, you've met people of influence and affluence, people who are wealthy, successful people. So can you tell us what the next 10 years would be like, based on your experience and based on the knowledge and the level of the influence and knowledge of your travel and experiences with people? And Mr. Dumont said, of course, I have traveled far and wide, and I've met people, I've met influential people, rich people, people who are wealthy and successful in all aspects of life. And I can tell you what the next 10 years would be like. And everybody was curiously waiting for his response with all eyes on him. And there was silence in the whole room. And he said, the next 10 years will be like just as it has always been. And he went further to explain to them that life for decades, for thousands of years, has always been as it has always been, which means opportunities missed with difficulties. Opportunities missed with difficulties. So life has always been a mixed experience of opportunities mixed with difficulties. So the more opportunities you have, the more difficulties you're going to get, which means you should not always look at the negative part of it, because the negative part of things won't help. That is one thing most of us don't know. The negative part of life is really there because of the positive aspect. What most of us don't know is that the positive aspect of life, which is the opportunities, the experiences, the travel, the merriment, the enjoyment and all that, is actually valuable. It's useful because of the difficulties that comes with it. So which means if there was no difficulty, if there was no failure, if there was no losses, the value to these other things are not going to be there. So what makes life valuable is the difficulties that comes with opportunities. So it is left for you to spot out the opportunities and leave the difficulties out of it in terms of how you see life. Of course, the difficulty will always be there, but you focus more on the opportunities. So when you focus on opportunities, you tend to neglect the difficulties. The difficulties are not really as useful as the opportunities because it is the opportunities that you look out for. Failure is important even way more than success. Failure is important even way more than success. Now, why is failure important? Because it is failure that gives us that feeling we get when we become successful. It is failure that makes us to understand the value of success. It is failure that makes us to understand that success is very important and we should aim at success. And that is why not everybody is successful, but a lot of people are failing every day. So it is easier to fail than to succeed. But when you fail, the more you fail, the more you fight and fail, the more experiences you're going to get about that particular thing you're failing at. And then when you eventually succeed in that thing, the sweetness of succeeding, the enjoyment, the euphoria of succeeding is gotten from the failures, the previous failures that you've encountered. So that is why when people try to run away from failure, when people try to run away from the negative, it's always funny because they are attached. What makes the light important, what gives the light relevant is the darkness. So which means if there was no darkness, the light would not be important. Simple as short. If the room wasn't dark, the light would not be useful. So what makes the light useful and more valuable than the darkness is because of the darkness. Okay? So you have to understand this thing. It's going to take some time, but have this understanding that life has always been opportunities mixed with difficulties, opportunities mixed with failures, success mixed with failures, winnings mixed with losses. This is how life has always been, and this is how it will always be. Now let me give you a proof about what I'm talking about. Opportunities mixed with difficulties. Life will always be like this, but it is left for me to train myself, to reprogram myself, to rewire myself in a way that I will spot those opportunities and focus on the opportunities despite the difficulties. So it is left for you to have this understanding, to know that life will always be life. Things will always happen. And there are rules of life. Life has certain rules, certain principles, certain laws. So if you don't change, things will never change. In fact, it is very easy to live life with expectation that someday something will happen, things will change. Someday things will change. Yeah, I was once like that, but things never changed. Rather, it wasn't. So it was at that point I knew that things will never really change until I change, until I change my perception of things, until I change my view of things. Let's take for instance, during the COVID, a lot of people were making millions and billions of dollars in their house. Now these people were locked in with you, just as the whole world, the entire world was locked in. So everybody was inside, but some people were still making money while they were inside. So you notice that it is not a thing of the environment at this point. It is not the government at this point. It is not your neighbors. It is not your uncle or your relative or your cynical friend, but it is you. It is how you see things. A businessman once woke up one morning and then he looked outside and saw the weather and said, "Oh, what a weather. The clouds are gathering and this is the best time to sleep. Because if you go out, you're not going to make any sales today because everybody is inside the house." And another person in the same business, the same line of business, but a different person looked outside and say, "Oh, what a weather to make sales." Because lots of other businesses will be shut down. So it's going to be only me that is open and I'm going to make all the sales I can make. So you see, these are two different people. The same weather condition, the same atmosphere, but different perception. So the farmer will probably go inside, shut the doors, eat, sleep, wake up, eat, sleep, and that is all for the day. But the latter would go outside, open his business, and make sales and become more richer. So it's the same weather, but different perception. What you see is very important because what happens to every other person. The difficulties happens to every other person. The stress happens to every other person. But what matters is how you perceive it. If you see the stress as an oil, you see it as a fuel to boost your engine, to boost yourself, to chase what you're chasing, to chase your dream, then it will happen that way. But if you see your stress as a hindrance or as something that could stop you from achieving your goal, it will also happen to you. You're seeing things based on your perception. That's why I talk about rewiring your mind, rewiring your brain, which is neuroencoding. I talked about neuroencoding in my previous videos. You can check out for it. You can look out for it. Neuroencoding, it's how we can rewire our brain, in a positive aspect. To rewire our brain from the old neural patterns. Very important. So now, if you don't do something, nothing is going to change. If you don't change, nothing changes. In fact, the law of motion talks about the tendency of an object to remain in a stable position unless it is impaired by a certain force, external force. Okay? So, if you don't do something about your life, nothing is going to happen. In fact, the chances are you're going to end up or wind up broke at the end of your life with regrets. Of course, with regrets. Regrets about the moves you should have made, regrets about the actions you should have taken, regrets about the steps you were too scared to take. Our perception of life influences our realities. Our perception of life influences the experiences that we have, the quality of life that we get. This is very, very, very important. So thank you very much for standing by and see you in the next one. Signing out. Please subscribe to our channel and don't forget to turn on the notification option so that you can be seeing our videos as we post.